All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Vigil team call for January 30th, and technically our first meeting for February, production month February. I'm excited that we have Dr. Brian Williamson again back for part two, and he almost had another huge reason to celebrate for Michigan, but they fell a little short. Battle of two halves, so it just goes to show you that if you pick it up in the second half, anyone can win. So all you, Dr. Brian.
Go blue.
Go Blue is right. And the good news is I'm a Packer fan, so that loss was easier to stomach than I definitely was attempting to be a Detroit Lions fan, and my experience of that was as heartbreaking as it is for all the Lions fans. I thought, like, this is what it's like to be a Lions fan. And yeah, it was not fun. I was very disappointed for them. It would have been nice
I'm a
to see
Lions fan that owns one share of the Packers.
Are you? Oh, cool. I love that they do that. I know you could buy a part of the team. So, well, great to be back with you all and spend a few minutes with you. And I think last time we talked about these leadership abilities, didn't we? We talked about hitting the ceiling. Every business goes through this, like we'd love our business growth to look like that. Just slow and steady up and to the right, profitable growth. It does not look like that. The reality is our business is a series of evolution. So we're growing up and to the right, then we hit a ceiling and we need a revolution, right? So it's evolution, hit a ceiling, and then revolution. And what happens is if we don't, viva la revolucion, as they say, and have a revolution, we will either plateau or will decline. And that's very predictable. That goes back to the 1960s research on how organizations grow and their life cycle and so on. And that's been shown time and time again. That just happens. So you can be leading an agency, leading a fledgling agency with just a couple people, becoming an agency owner. I mean, just expect that you should have the lens on of evolution and revolution. And then we talked a little bit about the abilities that help you break through that ceiling. So the good news is it's not like you just hit a ceiling and you're stopped, right? Like we get to keep growing. We as a child, you grow into an adult, and it would be really weird if it was like, we stopped. We all looked like we did when we were, 13, right? Thankfully, we're growing and getting older. It's actually a gift, right? Growing in our age, but also just wisdom and experiences and so on. So we talked about those 5 leadership abilities. I'll pause because you just never know. Does anybody have anything that they either have been reflecting on from last session that impacted you, or lingering questions? It's been a little while, so I have low expectations. I know what happens when we get busy. We get in the fray of work and it's like, what did we talk about? And they're like, oh yeah, it was that. But if there's any questions or reflections from last time, I'm happy to engage with you on those right now before we go into just a few minutes of what we're going to cover today.
I'm halfway through the book now, again. So I know it's part of our requirement because we're starting the leadership training next week. But the Traction by Gino Wickman, I've really taken a really much slower approach to reading the book this time. I was one of those people that I'd read 20 to 30 minutes every day, and it was more just to get through it rather than to get to it. You know what I mean? And now I'm taking my time with this one, and that's why I'm only halfway through it. And I also put the EOS model wheel on all of my screens as just kind of a reminder of where I'm at, because I do need to take control of my business again. And I want to understand what rocks mean, you know what I mean? So
good.
Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about that today is really just the value of setting 90-day rocks. And I want you to understand what that means and what those are and how to do it. It's going to be very simple, but let me first just say a couple things. So there's really 3 things that you can manage. You can manage your priorities. You can manage your energy, and you can manage distractions, right? That's about the three things that happen to us in our life that we can manage, right? If it's a crisis, obviously, like that manages us. Like when we're in a crisis time, an extremely challenging time, it just takes over us, and we need to engage with it and allow it to do that, right? When difficult things happen. But in the normal flow of our lives, right, we manage what's important to us, we manage our energy, and we manage our time. And so, I'm sorry, distractions. In fact, my point was to say we can't manage time, right? We talk about time management. You can't really manage time, but you can maximize your time by managing priorities, energy, and distractions. And there's a law that years and years ago, it just impacted me so powerfully. It's called Parkinson's Law. And it just says the work that we do expands to fill the time that we allot to it. Okay. An example of that would be is if I give 5 minutes to write an email to someone, a response, or if I give 10 minutes to write an email response to somebody, in my mind, I created that space for that task to be done in that particular time. And the work just will expand to fill that, right? And this actually is a principle where years ago, the first way it hit me was if somebody said to me out of, I think it was like David Allen's system of productivity or something, they said, if you can do it in 5 minutes, just do it. And that's actually my key, like distraction management tool. Like if something comes across my radar, and let's say I'm working on some whatever slide deck or training or something like that, not in the middle of a training, but preparing a training. If I can do it in 5 minutes, maybe I'll just knock it out and say, you know what, that's a 5-minute task. I'll just knock out that distraction, and that way I don't get like a whole flood of things that come my way. But it's a powerful principle to think about the work that we tend to procrastinate and put off, that dreadful work that we don't like. And I don't know what that is for you. You might want to put it in the chat. It'd be interesting to hear what's the dreadful work? Let's just call it. For me, it is like doing some detailed, tasks. If it's around putting together, I don't know, something to do with research and data and numbers and spreadsheets, like all that stuff. Yep. Dialing is a very normal one, right? Like, and what happens is like, even if it's following up on, let's say, client engagement or something. Yeah. Research for school. I hear you, Valerie. Let's say like we start to like build up this whole life where we just like make it a thing, right? We make it a thing, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And it's like we're creating this monster, like a Frankenstein that, we're just dressing up and making it look, and it's like we're dreading this work. But if we're being honest, when we sit down to do that work, like when we get it done, if we're in real focus mode, we're like, oh, that was not as bad as I thought it was. It's just how it is, right? So when we start to think about how do we maximize time by managing priorities, energy, and distractions, allotting time to things and starting to experiment, almost like gamify it and have fun with it, starting to experiment with, like, what if I only gave dialing, 20 minutes of true, focused, undistracted, 100% time, and I put it on the calendar. I did something fun right before it. I did something fun right after it. What could happen in the maximization of that time? What if I did my client follow-up and submitting things into carriers or whatever? Like what if I put an hour on my calendar and just, gave that time instead of like, or whatever it would be, 30 minutes. Like how far could I get? And you start to see that things don't take as much time as you think. Well, the tool that I want to focus on today, and we're just going to focus on one part of it, to be honest. The tool is, it's called the Vision Traction Organizer. And specifically what I'm showing you here is just the second page of this. So I actually forwarded this on to Michael last time, and you've got a copy of it, and he can re-forward it if you need to. You can just search his inbox for my email, but I think y'all have this somewhere. And And the part I want to focus on for today is just this middle part, right? We can always talk about the other parts and get into it another time. And Michael can actually teach you that as he's going through the EOS for leaders. That's the whole point of it, is that he starts to teach some of those tools to you all to maximize. But this middle column is designed for what we call rocks. And the analogy for rocks comes out of Stephen Covey's illustration. You may have heard of it. Y'all are savvy training people and been part of lots of things now. So it's if you picture a jar, the principle is you put the big rocks in first. And when you put the big rocks in first, you can fit the sand and the pebbles and the water. And what happens is if you just put in the pebbles and the sand and then the water, and then you try to put the rocks in, it doesn't work. So rocks are, very simply stated, your most important work that is not a part of your like day-to-day work. So, doing dials or learning how to work a certain lead type. Actually, that could be a rock, learning how to work certain lead types. But your dials, your appointments, your recruiting, your calls, your conference calls, like that would not be a rock. A rock is something big enough to get your attention that is going to take you about 90 days to complete. And it's a bigger thing. That's why it's a bigger rock. So for example, let's just say mastering working lighthouse leads, right? That could be a rock. Let's say, I'm just giving you examples. Creatively finding resources for lead investment, and or teaching my agents how to creatively think about resources for leads. Like I got to figure that out. Like, are there ways for me to be creative in how I, make my initial investments to start to get profitable? I'm picking on different areas of the business. Another one could be like a physical fitness goal, right? It could be like, I need to, start a consistent habit, new habits, and whatever, right? So, but the point is they take they're the most important things that you must do based on the ceiling that you're at. So why did we jump over to rocks from hitting the ceiling and those 5 leadership abilities? It's simple, because when you're at a ceiling, you're going to have to do some intentional work on something to break through the ceiling. So for some of you, it's recruiting system and really figuring out how do I improve my warm market and cold market recruiting and really define a system. And I'm going to talk to my mentors, or I'm going to talk to my downline, or whatever it is. Could be personal development. Like, my leadership is not on par. I think I might be struggling connecting with communication. I'm going to email B-dubs and find out what can I do? How can I become a leader worth following? That could be a rock for the quarter. All of those are very simple examples of rocks. And the reason this is so important is because psychologists tell us that we can only handle a 90-day world. Okay, so rocks live within a 90-day world. So typically rocks go with the calendar year. So you have January, February, March, right? Your first 90 days. So as you're thinking about it today, if you don't have rocks, by the way, it's totally fine to start with February and be off a month. Nobody's going to blow a whistle. So today, your rocks might be February, March, April. No problem. Literally nobody's going to have a problem with that, unless you are working with your tax person and you might be off like 1 month for something. It's knowing you all on this call, there should be no issue with that. If you don't have rocks, I would just say start fresh. Like, we're about to head into February, new start. So your future date would be April 30th. Is there 30 days in April or 31? 30 days, I think, right? All right. I know there's that like school rhyme, 30 days has September. And then I think it's like April's the next month. So I'm good there. So April 30th, 2024. And then we'll talk through these different pieces in a second. But that's the big idea. It's creating your biggest priorities. So it might be learn. I'm just going to be what are examples? Y'all tell me, as you think about the ceiling that you're at right now, just as an example, what would be one bigger thing that if you could solve it this quarter, that it would really help you break through that ceiling? So give me a couple examples from you also. Yeah, I see, Michael, I'm going to get you started here. Onboarding process for new agents. Okay, perfect. Define and implement onboarding process for new agents. Perfect. And then in this box, we put the owner. This should actually be, whoops. Formatting's messed up here. It should be over here, the who. And so it would be Michael owns that. He's the rock owner. Let me see. Just, you can unmute and tell me too, like what your, whoops, doggone it. Dang formatting. What's another example of a rock for you personally? It doesn't have to be for someone else. It could be simple. What would be an example of another rock for you this quarter? Somebody unmute and give me a.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, I had two that came to mind. Michael got the one, so the onboarding for new agents. And then another thing, I guess, that's kind of on my wheelhouse to learn and master is kind of the advanced market things. I don't know if that qualifies as
It
a
does. It does. You know, and then, you know, advanced market mastery, let's say, and, you know, it would be, now you would need a little bit of a plan to flesh out, like, okay, I'm going to start in reaching out to Jeff Sigworth and telling him what I'm plan on doing and getting his input. I'm going to go to Quality U and I'm going to dive into the certification. I'm going to talk to other people. Like, there's going to be some steps in there, but as long as you're starting to, you know, to define those, you know, you're in a good spot. Creating new and better personal habits. Great. I love that, Keith. Oops, doggone it. I'm not the formatting master, so I'm going to stop, but you get the point. Yeah. And that'd be great. Like, in what area, like, you'd want to define, get a little bit more specific. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's a great one. So we've got a couple examples for you, and that's as far as I want to go there. Now, for you all, your world's already full and you got plenty going on. You're trying to manage production and building, you're, you know, learning new things. It's a lot, right? So this list has 7 rocks, and I'll pull it. If you watch Shark Tank, I'm going to pull a Mr. Wonderful for a second. Like, I forbid you to have 7 rocks, right? Like, I always love when he calls people out and they're in the Shark Tank. He's like, I forbid you to keep doing this business. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your money. So like, I forbid you to have 7 rocks. Honestly, there should, at the very most, if some of the rocks are like 15 pounds instead of 50 pounds, I could see, my ideal is 3 to 4 for you, right? If a couple of them are 15-pound and not 50-pound rocks, I could see 5, but I would almost delete, like, there should be not one person that has 7 personal rocks in a quarter. That means you're not thinking about rock correctly in the flow of your work. So I would say 3 to 4 is ideal. It's not a contest to try to get more. It's just the main priority things that you need to get to, right? The top section here is just a little bit of a guide to help you. Like, what does your revenue look like? And for simplicity, you can start, just use APV, volume goals, right? Whatever it is, you know, 50K, 100, however you want to think about it. Monthly or for the whole, really it should be for the whole quarter, let's say. You know, but you could do, well, let's even say, yeah, I don't know, I'm going to say 150K submit and whatever placed there, like whatever your main revenue goal is for the quarter, you would put it up there. Very simple, right? Like, this business can stay simple, and you know, you can keep it along those lines. And you could think about also probably, if you've got agents that you have overrides from, right, you'd have one number up here that'd be like whatever your, you know, I'm going to do like 125,000 the whole quarter. That includes your personal production, your agency production, whatever, right? Like, y'all know, I'm not trying to put numbers in your mind. You got to think about, where have you been over the last year or however long you've been here? what's the current state of your agency, and what's realistic, and what's a bit of a stretch goal for this 90 days. And it's normal to put a range, right? Like 125 to 150. Like nobody really hits it on the dime usually. Yeah, sometimes we set goals, we put too much pressure on ourselves, like I'm gonna hit 150. Like, well, why not 125 400 or 150 13? Because we're just ballparking anyway, so might as well put a range. And then your measurables are really cool, because your measurables are simple things like I'm gonna have one team leader. I'm gonna have, depends on where you're at in the business, right? I'm gonna have 5 new writers per month, or however you want to define it. You're going to have breakout 1 agency owner if you're at that level, or anything that's meaningful for you, right? Like 20 interviews a week, whatever it is. And you just put your measurables in there so you can start to track what is it that you want to achieve for that particular time period. So that's a measurable, right? So if we've got if we know where we're heading, where we want our revenue to be, we know what our measurables are that are going to get there. Those things have to match up. And then what are the priority things that are going to get us there? That's really kind of how you think about this column, right? Sometimes the rocks inform the revenues. Most of the time it's a little bit of a top down, right? April 30th, 2024. I think it's realistic, as I thought about my agency, to have about $150,000 of revenue this quarter. My measurables to do that are, like, it would be not consistent to say, like, I'm going to have 1 new writer. And then I'd ask you, like, okay, how are you going to achieve that revenue goal? And you're like, well, I'm just going to have 1 person. Well, maybe that doesn't get to that number, right? It's got to be, you're going to have to find a couple people and maintain your production. So it's considering all of that, right? Writing it down, making it clear. And then what are the priorities that are going to be the things that get you there? That's all the rock is. What's a priority that helps you get there? And if you focus on that, you're going to find a lot of fruit. So my words are up. I've only got a few minutes today. I've got a hard stop at 1 myself. And I know that's originally we scheduled that much time. I saw this time you gave me extra time. I'm like, I can't take it today because I've got to go to an appointment. But I want your questions, your thoughts, clarifications, and I'll give you this so what, now what at the end. Like, how would you go about doing this?
So I have a question. So when you're talking about the rocks, I mean, is it something that should be accomplished in 90 days and then a new rock created? Or is it something that's like a part 1 of the rock in a big picture of, maybe a year goal, but we're going to accomplish, the big chunk of it or something like that?
It's great. Excellent question. Both things can be true. That's a very, very well insightful question, Brenda. So for this purpose, it would be like something that's achievable and that you can complete in 90 days is what we're looking for, because we're starting with rocks in this first conversation. And we use the acronym of like a SMART rock: specific, measurable, achievable, right? Achievable in 90 days, realistic, and time bound, right? So obviously it's time bound. Is it realistic? Like, don't put in there that I'm going to have 1,000 new writers, right? Like, that's not realistic. That goes with achievable too. Like, can I do this? Relevant. I'm sorry. I like to use relevant instead of realistic, because relevant means, is it going to help me accomplish my revenue goals? So I would stick with relevant. And so when you set a rock, it typically is, I mean, new and better personal habits. Keith, when he walks through his, it should be a little bit more specific. Like, what do we mean? What kind of habits? What things? That wasn't the purpose of the question at the beginning. So you did perfect, Keith. My point is, yes, the way we're doing it, it would be what's achievable in 90 days. When you get into doing 1-year planning, setting a goal, it typically is like your rocks are like a fourth of that big goal. Oftentimes, they don't always 100% sync up, but yes, it would be like, all right, if I get this far, like, let's imagine Michael's annual goal was, a fully functional onboarding system, onboarding process for new agents that is owned by my agency. Right? Okay, well, then his first one is like, I got to define it and begin implementing it. The second one is more, training my leaders in it and making sure they get it right. So the second quarter, yeah, that's the idea. Good question.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for your time. This is such great info. I'm actually right now in the middle of a psychology class, and it talks about the importance of 90-day goals and how our
Good.
brains are wired for that. So this all makes perfect sense. Could you talk a little bit about why like a reinforcer is positive, and maybe what a positive reinforcement would be as we're setting these goals? Could you give an example of that or something to help us along the way? I know it's different for everyone, but more than just achieving the goal, but actually having that reinforcer to kind of bind us to it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, you're using some good psychology language for a non-psychologist, reinforcing the goal. How would you understand that? I'm going to put it back on you. It's a great question. What would be an example from you?
For instance, like I just went in and decided one of my personal goals for this year was to get fit again.
Mhm.
The reinforcer behind it was because walking a long distance, I get real winded and out of breath. So that's my reinforcer.
Yeah, good.
It's not just like giving myself okay, if I start walking a mile every day, I'm going to buy me something. But the actual reinforcer is walking the mile is going to allow me to breathe and walk further and be able to go to the amusement park this summer when we plan our family trip. But I'm just trying to figure out like what a reinforcer would be other than just, like a upgrade in commission. I mean, something you can give us that would help us tie our feet to the fire better.
Love it. Love it. Well, yeah. Final thoughts. I love that. And honestly, what I'd say, and I got to check, I don't think it's up yet. I'll get with my LMS guy. If you all go back, and you may not all be on the builders call, but if you listen to Sue Adams' call from a couple of weeks ago, where she did savers and the morning miracle stuff, miracle morning, like that's not my model, the miracle morning, but I will say, that is exactly what you're talking about. It's affirmations. Like you would tie your goals to like, I'm going to be a fit person in 90 days. I'm going to get to this place because this matters and, XYZ. So yeah, I think daily affirmations of your 90-day rocks is a huge thing. And my encouragement until I'm back again, I mean, Michael can walk you guys through this, is just like, give it a go, work on some 90-day rocks, measurables, revenue, give it a go and see where it takes you, and work with Michael and your uplines to kind of clarify that. And you're going to see great results from doing it. But I like to work with busy salespeople to say, like, it's just enough structure not to be annoying. I know you're not used to doing this, but it'll help you if you do. So thanks for your time. I got to bounce because I'm driving to my destination. But Michael, thanks for inviting me back. I really appreciate it, bro.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Does anyone have any more questions on that? Because this is what, agency owners are going to be going through the full course of this. So for 6 months, we're going to meet weekly on Tuesday. So it'll be right before this call. And that's one of the things that we're going to be doing, is going through that whole EOS model again. And if you guys aren't familiar with it at all, Traction by Gino Wickman. So it's called Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. It's on Audible as well. It's not a book that I would recommend that you listen to exclusively on Audible because of the different check-ins, and there's a lot of work that comes through the book itself. So, and it's super affordable too, guys. And Audible's having a sale right now. If you guys need anything, FYI. So make sure you guys are taking advantage of that. But happy to answer any questions when it comes to that. This is the open hour, open office hours as well. So if you guys have questions, comments, or concerns, this is the time. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording real quick.